Dr. Corsi, thank you for joining me again today. As people who've been watching Dr. Corsi's Prescription for America are very aware, this has become our regular show each week. It's so strange when the computer decides to cooperate or not. How are you today, Doctor?
I'm doing great, Jason. Looking forward to it. We got a lot to cover today.
We do. It was a pretty, I guess disgraceful is the only word we could use for the performance of Joe Biden and some of the other delusional Democrats in that debate last night. What would you say about that, Dr. Corsi?
Well, I think I'm saying bye-bye Biden. I mean, the first casualty, in fact, I think the only casualty of this Ukraine gate is going to be Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And he already, I mean, in the debate yesterday, I guess it was yesterday, he had 4 minutes total time.
Yeah.
I think or tripled by Elizabeth Warren, who was the focus of the conversation. Biden's finished. I mean, the Democrats are not going to go through 12 months of the election cycle leading up to November 2020. We're just about there. In a couple of weeks, it's going to be November 2019, talking about Biden and Ukraine. They're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
And if anything, what this the Democrats, in their hatred of Trump, in their insanity of hatred of Trump, Schiff and the others concocted this Ukraine gate, and they called an artillery strike on their own position.
Yeah.
Because the real story in Ukraine has always been Biden's corruption and Hillary Clinton, also her corruption, working with the Poroshenko, the previous president, to get dirt on Paul Manafort out of Ukraine that was then planted with newspapers in the United States to destroy Paul Manafort when he was, at that time, campaign chairman for Donald Trump. It was the precipitating cause of Manafort resigning, and it was based on a fake story that the previous president of Ukraine, a guy named Yanukovych, who fled to Russia, that Manafort was consulting, had this black ledger and was paying Manafort in cash. It never happened. It was not part of the indictments from Manafort. And I can guarantee you, if Mueller found that Manafort had cash payments from Yanukovych that he didn't pay taxes on, that would have been an indictment. It just wasn't. But what's happening, I think, today, and I think this is where we're really going to focus, if you take a look at my podcast today, this is kind of really interesting serendipity. I focus the entire podcast on this Atlantic Council.
Ah, yes.
And the Atlantic Council, and there's a developing story. The Atlantic Council was raking in money, $250,000 a year, from Hunter Biden's Ukrainian employer, Burisma. Burisma was funding the Ukrainian Council, and in fact, they were holding elaborate meetings in Monaco. Well, when Zlochevsky, who is the founder of Burisma, was forced into exile, he ended up in Monaco. Then they decided, at that point, Burisma started funding the Atlantic Council. Joe Biden has been a major figure in the Atlantic Council. Here's a picture of Joe Biden as vice president in 2011 at an Atlantic Council Distinguished Leadership Award ceremony. So Zlochevsky decided that he would gain credibility by funding, through Burisma, the Atlantic Council, and this was going to repair his tattered image. By the way, also the Bidens arranged to get attorneys representing Burisma, Zlochevsky, and in fact, I think they were able to get, let's see, which was the firm. As a result of the legal, they were able to get the money that UK had taken and confiscated from Zlochevsky, returned to Zlochevsky. And today it's just broken that the Atlantic Council funded the trip of this Adam Schiff staffer to Ukraine 12 days after the whistleblower report. And they met with this William Taylor, the staffer funded by the Atlantic Council, which traces back to Burisma, which traces back to Biden, is funded, and also by Soros. In Ukraine, the staffer met with Bill Taylor, who is in fact the U.S. envoy to Ukraine, who was there replacing for the time being this this Obama ambassador that Trump fired in May. And so I guess this was the time when they could get his testimony ready, because Taylor is the one who had this big exchange of text messages with Ambassador Sondland, who is Trump's ambassador to the EU, in which Taylor was mouthing the Democratic talking points that the call between which Taylor did not hear, between Zelensky and Trump was a quid pro quo in which Trump said, "I'll take aid away if you don't investigate Biden." So at the center of this is the Atlantic Council, which has corrupt ties back to the Bidens, funded by Burisma. It was $250,000 a year, and Zelensky was the one who was Zlobchesky was the one doing it in order to redeem himself. And I believe that it will interest you. I think that the law firm they got hired was the Boys Law Firm.
Whoa! Holy cow! So wait a minute. Who hired the Boys Law Firm?
This was the one that Biden family arranged for Zlobchesky to hire in the United States.
Wow!
I'll have to look for this article.
Doctor, that's super interesting.
Especially with the interviews you've just done. Tell us how that ties into the work you've been doing.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Tonight, we're going to have an exclusive interview with Alan Dershowitz. I'll be doing a legal analysis of the recent judgment, or rather, I should say, the recent order that came out of the Southern District of New York in Giuffre versus Dershowitz, and I've got an interview with Alan Dershowitz I'll be sharing in that video tonight with Jared and Elizabeth Beck. I also want to take a minute, Doctor, to remind everyone that you and I will be starting the regular show, Dr. Corsi's Prescription for America. That's going to be starting in just about 20 minutes on patreon.com/Jerome Corsi and patreon.com/Crowdsource the Truth. I want to remind everybody who's watching us right now on YouTube and Periscope and Facebook and DLive and BitChute and all of the different platforms that we are on, it's very important that people become sponsors of Dr. Corsi, particularly as we get closer to the 2020 election. We've already seen the tremendous lengths that not only the digital overlords of Silicon Valley will go to suppress the type of information that Dr. Corsi is bringing us, but in Dr. Corsi's case, we've seen the strong arm of the DOJ try to crush the doctor. So it's important that we support the doctor financially, and by going to patreon.com/Jerome Corsi, that's a great way to do that and be able to enjoy the exclusive content that we're putting out every Thursday at 5 p.m. on Dr. Corsi's Prescription for America. I do hope that people will also visit patreon.com/Crowdsource the Truth and sponsor Crowdsource the Truth there. And don't forget, you can also check out the doctor's free webpage at CorsiNation.com. He's decoding the news every day, and it's a great way to keep up with the doctor and support his legal fight that is ongoing against Robert Mueller. So, Doctor, what else are we going to be talking about in just 20 minutes when we begin on Patreon?
Well, let me give you one more, I think, really important thing that we're going to get into. And by the way, today, October 17th, is the decode I did on the Atlantic Council. And then Aaron Klein, who is one of my associates when I was working for WorldNet Daily, broke the story right just a few minutes ago in Breitbart.
Yeah.
That the Schiffer staffer met in the Ukraine 12 days after the whistleblower with Bill Taylor, who turns out to be one of the hate Trump holdovers from the Obama State Department, who's trying to develop this narrative with Schiff, which seems to me to be a fake narrative. But here's the key paragraph. Hunter Biden, this is from Max Blumenthal, who has been a great reporter on Ukraine and the Biden corruption in the Consortium News.
Wow.
And he wrote, Hunter Biden tried to repay the $50,000 a month gig Zlobchesky and Burisma. Zlobchesky is the corrupt oligarch who founded Burisma, had handed him by enlisting a top D.C. law firm, Boys, Schiller, and Flexner, where he served as co-counsel, Biden did, to help improve Burisma's corporate governance. By the following January, Zlochevsky's assets were unfrozen from the UK. I guess $250,000 a year paid to the Atlantic Council by Zlochevsky and holding some elaborate meetings in Monaco where Zlochevsky fled to was a good investment when Hunter Biden on the board, Joe Biden tied into the Atlantic Council, William Taylor, one of the fellows doing all kinds of reports for the Atlantic Council. So all this ties into the Soros-funded Atlantic Council that, in fact, has Burisma money in it. And what Zlochevsky gets for his investment is Hunter Biden, his co-counsel, with Boies. Boies, you remember, is the attorney who represented Al Gore in the the year 2000 election recount in Florida.
Right.
Boies is a very hard left attorney, and Zlochevsky, using Hunter Biden as co-counsel and Boies' firm, gets back in the following January after he's hired the $23 million the UK froze because Zlochevsky was siphoning off money from Burisma, a Cyprus headquartered firm.
Wow.
With part of the Panama Papers notified as, this is money laundering. And the UK took Zlochevsky's money as money laundered. So the web of corruption here is building for Biden. And I think if we would never have gotten attention for this story. I mean, this is stuff I've been waiting. If Biden was going to be the candidate, this would have been my next book. Okay? But, we'd never have gotten the attention. This is like the Democrats swift-boated Biden by doing this.
They're so dumb, Doctor. It's unbelievable. I want to point one other important thing out.
They also swift-boated Hillary, because Hillary's corruption in Ukraine is the next story, and it will tie in also with the Atlantic Council, and it will tie in with Biden.
And I think we're not done with the Atlantic Council, Dr. Corsi, because it's important that we remind everyone that one of the senior fellows at the Atlantic Council is Dmitry Alperovitch, the chief technology officer of CrowdStrike, the company that investigated the DNC server. So there's quite a bit going on at that Atlantic Council.
Jason, also, the CrowdStrike and Alperovitch was the guy who, in Ukraine, said that Russia planted the malware in the Ukrainian artillery. That was the subject of discussion. It's false. That was the subject of discussion between Trump and Zelensky.
Exactly.
And when Trump's in the telephone conversation on July 25th, when Trump says, "You've got the server," he doesn't mean the server from the DNC, which is still being hidden away by the Democrats in the DNC headquarters in Washington. Trump was talking about the Ukrainian server, which they could go into and show that CrowdStrike, this Atlantic Council, Alperovitch or whatever the guy's name, who is one of the founders of CrowdStrike and member of that council, that it was fraudulent equally from CrowdStrike to blame this attack, the malware attack on Russia. There was no GPS data put into the malware in the Ukrainian artillery by Russia. Russia didn't do it. There was no GPS malware, and Russia did not destroy something like 75% of the Ukrainian artillery, which was the story at the time. Right. It was all, and Trump is saying, you can help me prove that this whole thing of the Russia collusion was a hoax because you've got the computer that CrowdStrike looked at in Ukraine, go get it. All of this with the Atlantic Council, though, and I think the fact that Schiff had a staffer go into Ukraine to talk to Taylor 12 days before the whistleblower was released as comments, I'm not sure that they're actually, I think Schiff might have been the whistleblower. I'm not sure there's actually a person who was the whistleblower. Yeah. I mean, I think this whole complaint was written up by Schiff and his staff. Yeah. I think it's all going to trace back to information, which we're going to disclose today, that ties into the Atlantic Council and to the Footnote, which is a Soros research group that a lot of the accusations from the whistleblower seems to stem from.
Wow.
So I think as we decode this story and unravel it, Schiff's credibility I'm not sure if Schiff's committed crimes in setting this up, but it wouldn't surprise me because Schiff originally said he did not meet with the whistleblower. We found out that was not true.
Wow.
Now we're finding out this all ties into Soros, the Atlantic Council, and this Soros-funded group who provided a lot of the information behind it. The group is it also ties in, by the way, to McCain. It's just it's staggering how all this ties together. But at any rate, what we found out here today is the Atlantic Council is a centerpiece that ties all this together, and Schiff has been lying. I think Schiff set this up with the whistleblower, if there is one, set it up by sending his staffer to the Ukraine on an Atlantic Council-funded trip. The Atlantic Council is funded by Burisma. Biden's at the center of it. Hunter Biden was co-counsel with Boys in getting Zlochevsky's money freed from the Ukraine. I wonder how much Hunter Biden got paid as co-counsel.
Surprising that Hunter Biden can be a lawyer. He puts down the crack pipe for long enough to be able to practice law. You know, Doctor, one other really interesting thing with regard to the Atlantic Council, just yesterday I had whistleblower Patrick Berge on the show, and he also mentioned the Atlantic Council and this whole partnership with Facebook and how they're trying to stamp out fake news according to them. But Patrick told us how they actually are creating fake news and how this was all brought about through a company created by Barack Obama's former national security advisor that Patrick worked for. So we've got firsthand testimony from a whistleblower who knows what this is all about. People are going to want to check that out. But Doctor, we're just a few minutes away now from our show.
The one last thing I want to say is that the Soros organization that is in this Aaron Klein report is the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, the OCCRP, which is the precursor for a lot of the so-called whistleblowers' complaints. This is mentioned in one of the footnotes. The footnotes references this Soros-funded Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. On July 22nd, 2 associates of Giuliani traveled to Kiev. So a lot of the accusations against Giuliani stem from this Soros-funded group. It's tying all back into the Soros-funded Atlantic Council, and Burisma's in the middle of it, paying the Atlantic Council in order to get Zlochevsky out of hot water as a corrupt oligarch, get his $23 million for money laundering back out of London.
I'll tell you, Doctor, it sounds to me like a tight concoction of cutouts and fronts and money laundering entities that are being exposed by President Trump. It's truly staggering. Anybody who had any doubts about the draining of the swamp, I really do believe we are witnessing it right now, and the swamp is angry. We'll be going into great detail, Doctor, in just about 10 minutes when the show commences on patreon.com/Jerome Corsi, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I do want to let everybody know that Dr. Corsi has just created a Subscribestar page as well, and once he is through the approval process with Subscribestar, people who want to sponsor the doctor will have that option as well. You can also go over to CorsiNation.com and you can support the doctor over there, as well as following his daily news decodes. Doctor, I'll see you in just a few minutes on patreon.com/Jerome Corsi and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth.
Look forward to it, Jason. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone for watching. We'll see you in a few minutes.